Hi, everyone. My name's Dan Morrison, and this is Happy Not Satisfied. I'm going to do a solo episode today to talk about a recent Substack article that I wrote that I think resonated with a lot of people. It was about my journey to business school and the application process and what that looked like, because it was pretty unconventional with a lot of rejection and some interesting twists and turns along the way. I graduated from business school from the USC Marshall School of Business in 2023, but what I often have not talked about until recently was the fact that I actually got denied by every single school that I applied to, including USC. And to be honest, I think I felt some shame and some embarrassment about this story until I realized I'm actually proud of the story and how it turned out. And I think it's a good lesson in perseverance and how really we're the masters of our own destiny. We're our own best advocates, and we have to look out for ourselves sometimes because we're the only ones that will do that. So my journey with business school started, I want to say in 2020. So I was a high school band director. I did that for 11 years. It was an incredible career. My dad was a high school band director, and so it was the family business. It was something that I had been in and around for literally my entire life. And I think I knew that I wanted to try something different. Like I said, I loved what I did. I loved being a musician, a music teacher, and all the things that came with that. But I'm also someone that's always looking kind of for a new challenge, a new opportunity, and maybe what's going to come next. And I think like a lot of people during COVID, during the pandemic, when I had some time to think and separate myself from the normal day-to-day intensity, I think I realized that this was sort of a pivotal moment in my life where I could try something new. And that's where the idea of business school came in. I've got to give a shout out to my great friend, Jim Dyer. He's actually the one who talked to me about business school. I was pretty unaware of what it was or what went into it or any of these things, but it sounded interesting. I was always kind of interested in the business world. My only real knowledge was kind of self-taught reading the Wall Street Journal, and that's where it ended, but always felt kind of entrepreneurial and interested in the world well outside of what I was used to in public education. So anyway, it turned out that I think partially because of the pandemic and some of the difficulties from that, some schools were actually waiving the requirement for testing. So you either take the GMAT or the GRE traditionally, and that's a really big part of what determines if you're going to get into business school, sort of like the SAT or the ACT when you're applying to undergrad. So I was like, okay, I would rather not have to study for hours and hours and hours and weeks and months and take this huge test. I'm going to apply to a school where that's not required. And kind of surprising to me, MIT was actually waiving the requirement for this testing. So I went ahead and applied to business school at MIT. And part of it was having to put together this video where you explain yourself. And I remember I got up on the marching band tower and my wife Ellie filmed me, and I had this really succinct thing that I memorized, and I felt so good about it. And honestly, going into the whole process, I naively felt like I have this great, unique background, and I've basically run a business, right? I was a high school band director, but it was a large program, and there was close to 400 students, and then along with that, there's 800 parents, and the 501c3 booster organization, and you're dealing with budgets, and you're managing people, and there's faculty and staff and creative designers and all these things. Like I said, it was really incredible career and world to be a part of. But in my mind, I was thinking, well, this is so cool, and clearly they'll see the parallels. Turns out I was dead wrong, because I was denied without an interview at MIT. And that one was tough to swallow. I was already putting myself in the scenario of I'm living, in Boston, and I'm doing these things, and it's to sort of very unceremoniously be sent an email that says, thanks, but no thanks, we're not even going to give you an interview. It was a little bit disheartening, but I was proud of myself, because instead of kind of giving up, thinking, well, this maybe wasn't meant to be, I decided to apply to several more schools, and I decided to take the GRE, which is one of the tests that many of the schools did require to be considered for being admitted to the school. So that was quite a process studying for that test. And it had been a long time since I had to do really anything like that. And so it was just every spare moment that I had, I was memorizing vocabulary words. I was relearning math or learning new parts of sort of math that I hadn't done before. Tons of studying, tons of planning. I remember I used this this website. It's called Magoosh, maybe something like that, some silly word, and it was just millions of questions and tests and pre-tests and question sets and increasing in difficulty. And I had this whole thing planned out. I ended up taking the GRE a couple times, and it's a pretty intense process. And, it's like they have to pat you down and make sure that you don't have something hidden up your sleeve that's going to help you on the test or something like that. And it ended up going reasonably well. And my scores were either the same or a little above what the median scores were for the previous year to get admitted to the Harvard Business School. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm only saying that because I think it gives even more sort of context for the rest of this story, which is I took the GRE. I got scores I was proud of. I spent countless hours on these essays, and I have to give a huge shout out to my incredible wife and partner in crime in all of this, Ellie, because she was helping edit and helping give ideas. And I mean, I probably could still find draft 10.1.A of my Harvard Business School essay on my Google Drive, because it was just draft after draft after draft after revision, and all of these hours and energy was put into this whole process. So what has to happen for business school to get accepted is you apply, you submit these materials, you submit your test scores and the essays, and then if they want to consider you, then you get an interview, and then you have the interview. If that goes well, then potentially you get accepted. So basically, I applied to Columbia, and I was denied without an interview. I applied to UCLA, denied without an interview. I applied to NYU, denied without an interview. And I applied to USC. And like I mentioned, I did end up going to USC. But here's an interesting story. So I had all of this sort of, failure, rejection from all these schools. And I will tell you, that was a very difficult time. It was hard to stomach just rejection after rejection, especially after feeling so optimistic in the beginning. Like I said, probably naively optimistic in the end. But with USC, it was getting to the end of the cycle, right? And so that means it was almost time where they were going to tell me you're not accepted based on dates that they had given. And I knew that there was not enough time to get a call, get an interview, have the interview, and go on to the next round. It was basically a done deal. So at that point, I felt like, well, okay, I don't have anything to lose here. I might as well just shoot my shot. So I actually emailed the Dean of Admissions directly with a very sort of clear, concise, laid out document saying why I felt like I was a worthwhile applicant to the school. And I included a video of myself talking to students before a big competition. I included a video of the marching band show. I talked about sort of the things I laid out at the beginning of this episode of all the stuff I did that really had parallels to the business world. And I sent it. And the next day, I get an email telling me that I was denied without an interview. And so I thought, okay, well, he got this, and he just pulled the lever and put me out of my misery, thinking, okay, well, I guess that's it. Because that was, at that point, there was no more schools I could apply to, and it was sort of the end of the road. So I was kind of figuring out what to do next. But then the next day I get another email, and it's a direct response from the Dean of Admissions. And he says, well, you probably saw this, but we denied you. I was like, yeah, I did see that actually. But he said, but that was before I got this email. And he was kind of blown away by the materials. And he thought that what I had sent was really compelling, and he was going to put me on the wait list, which was incredible news. I mean, essentially, I was undenied from business school, which was pretty cool. I was definitely incredibly ecstatic in that moment after months and months and months of rejection. That seed of hope felt really good. So then a week later, maybe, I get an email Actually, no, maybe it was longer than that. It was maybe a couple weeks. I get an email with an interview invite, and that was unbelievably exciting. I remember just like rejoicing and screaming, and my neighbors probably thought something was going on inside my house. But I got the interview, did the interview. It went super well. I ended up getting accepted to the school. That's where I went to school, and kind of the rest is history. And even in the second year, I actually ended up getting a scholarship. So after all that, getting denied everywhere from the school, all the way to getting a scholarship, was a very interesting and difficult but rewarding journey. And I don't tell this story to say, look at me, I did this thing. I think it's important to share stories like this because it's further proof, like I mentioned at the beginning, that we can be the masters of our own destiny, and we have to be our own advocates. And there are times where a no is a no for a good reason, and it's directing us into something that makes more sense. And you have to use your intuition to be able to kind of differentiate between that and the situation that I was in. But I would say that was one of my proudest accomplishments, was pushing through and finding an unconventional way to find my way to yes. And it's something that I've taken with me since then. And I think it really was something that kind of gave me confidence in how I approach situations and confidence in how I can advocate myself when appropriate. And it's something that I'll never forget and sort of cherish. And looking back, I'm actually so glad that it went that way and not the easy way. Not only because it's a great story, but also because now I have this, I think, helpful story that I can share with others. And it's, again, I think it gives me even more confidence in maybe my grit and determination than if it had just gone easily and smoothly with no friction. And so I think these are important stories to tell. I also think that it's a reminder that things don't often come easily that are worth doing. You know, it's that whole saying of, if it wasn't hard, everyone would do it, right? And I think that it's easy to lose sight of that. I also, just thinking for my own self, I was embarrassed a little bit by this. And I didn't tell this story to, I don't think I told a story to a single one of my classmates in my entire time at school. I didn't really share it with almost anyone except for maybe my family. And my relationship with the story and with the situation that unfolded has changed completely, to the point where now I do feel very proud of how it all went. And it's interesting when you can reframe things that might feel shameful or embarrassing and realize these were sort of life-defining moments that I persevered through and came out on the other side stronger and better in a lot of ways. And, you know, in business school, it was a very special time, and I'm so glad that it happened, and I learned an unbelievable amount. I had my son while I was in business school, Leo, who's now a little bit over 2 years old, and obviously could not be more thrilled about that. And, you know, it makes me think, who knows how things would have unfolded if I hadn't sort of pushed for myself and then gone out to California and then had my son. You know, you just never know why things are happening when they're happening, but you look back and then you can connect the dots, and I really believe in that. So I tell the story, I think, to encourage all of us to remember to advocate for ourselves, remember that we are the people that care the most about our future and our quote-unquote destiny, and it's not always going to be easy. And I think it's Another takeaway from this, I would say, is because I knew what the story was, but I also knew how I felt like I didn't necessarily want to share that. I was not maybe totally transparent in that part of how my life was going. And I think it's a reminder that you see things online, you see things on social media, you see stuff from other people, and it's easy to assume that, oh my gosh, like things are just going amazingly for so-and-so, or it's just so easy, or, you know, why is this difficult for me, but not for them? You know, and I think we don't ever know the full story. And I think that's really important to remember. And we might not always tell the full story, you know, and I'm not saying you always should, but I've found, at least in this instance, that opening up and sharing this kind of healed a part of me and helped me grow in ways that I didn't even know I could. So I think that's encouragement to, comparison is the thief of joy, right? And I think that I fall into that trap. I think it's easy for all of us to fall into that trap, but we don't have all the information about who we're comparing ourselves to. And this story, honestly, was a little bit of a catalyst for why I initially started this podcast, because a big part of why I started this was, if you've listened from early on, I would often talk to successful people about a time that they created their own luck, because I like to talk about, it's like you see the tip of the iceberg with somebody, but you don't really know what the rest of the iceberg looked like, right? So in this instance, the tip of the iceberg was, oh, Dan got into USC Business School. But the rest of the iceberg was very messy and complicated and didn't even maybe look like an iceberg, to be honest. So, I think it's a reminder that we should work to create our own luck, that we don't know what the rest of the iceberg looks like for other people, but just showing others grace because we don't maybe know their full situation, showing ourselves grace because we're working hard and we're doing our best and things don't always work the way we want them to. But in the end, you think about like the hero's journey and having to overcome adversity. When you have adversity to overcome, you have a story to tell. You have those experiences to fall back on and feel confidence from. And ultimately, I think those things make us stronger, make us better advocates for ourselves, and make it so that we can live a fulfilling life and a meaningful life and something that makes our lives feel fuller. So I guess I would encourage all of you to continue to advocate for yourself and live a life of confidence and meaning and fulfillment in any way that you can, and know that your story is your story and it's not meant to be shared by someone else unless you want it to be. So I hope this is maybe a little helpful, encouraging, and I appreciate you taking some time to listen to this story. And I just wanted to give a little more context after writing that article, because I think it was something that maybe resonated a little bit, and I was excited to talk about it. So I appreciate it, and I will be back with you guys with another episode soon. Thanks.